myself, my name is Greg Peterson. I am a member of the Jamestown Bar Association and also chairman of its memorial committee. And as such, I am calling a special meeting to celebrate the life of Don Bennink. The order of the day is I'm going to read an obituary on Don, and then I'm going to show a video, an excerpt from what was probably a 2-hour interview Don did with me about 2 years ago. I highly recommend you find it and watch it if you're interested in Don's career. There's a piece of the career which you may not know much about, which is the law part. That's what we're really celebrating a part of today, but obviously you're here from his world, mostly here from his world personal side of it, as well as the climber side of it, and of course all that he did in Bell, Florida. So this will be ultimately, when we conclude, as we're filming it, it will be up on YouTube. There'll be a celebration of life of Donald Bennink. It'll be on YouTube. So for those that cannot attend, you can send that along. I'll also, when we get done with the video, I will call anybody forward who wants to chat and tell a story. Please don't be intimidated by that. This is your one chance to share a story or two about Don and what he meant maybe to you, to the community, et cetera, that nobody else will ever know if you don't do it. So please, I'll encourage that, and that'll be at the very end, and then we'll conclude. Donald Bennink Jr., a nationally recognized farmer and longtime resident of Bell, Florida, passed away on April 20th, 2026 at the age of 84. A native of Western New York, Don began milking cows in junior high school and continued through his graduation from Cornell University in 1963. While expanding his early farming operations, he also pursued higher education, earning a law degree from Cleveland Marshall University and working in legal practice. I'm going to just add here that he worked for the law firm of Bailey and Ledestro for approximately 4 or 5 years. We'll hear a little bit about that later. Ultimately, his passion for dairy farming led him to relocate to Bell, Florida in 1980, where he founded the North Florida Holsteins. Over the decades, Don built one of the most respected dairy operations in the country. Known for his innovation and forward-thinking approach, he implemented advanced construction and milking practices, including introduction of tunnel-ventilated barns in 2001 to improve herd comfort and productivity. His operation grew to encompass approximately 12,000 head of cattle over 3,000 acres. Don was also deeply committed to advancing the dairy industry through research and education. He developed long-standing partnerships with leading universities, including the University of Florida and Ohio State University, creating one of the most respected international student internship programs in the field. North Florida Holsteins became a living laboratory supporting generations of students, researchers, and scientists. Internationally recognized for his contributions to animal genetics and reproduction, Don was a pioneer in genomic testing who developed his own system of genetic selection, advancing and improving the Holstein breed. He was a highly respected industry leader, serving on the boards of the Upper Florida Milk Producers, Florida Dairy Farmers, and Southeast Milk, holding key roles including chairman of SMI Trucking for more than 25 years and president of Florida Dairy Farmers. His many honors reflected the impact of his work, including induction into the Florida 4-H Hall of Fame and the Florida Agricultural Hall of Fame, the Outstanding Alumni Award from Cornell University in 2024, and recognition as World Dairy Expo's Dairyman of the Year, one of the industry's highest distinctions. Above all, Don was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. He'll be remembered for his vision, work ethic, and enduring contributions to agriculture, as well as the pride he took in his family and the legacy he built. I will not be reading, but I do want to call out, there is a wonderful article dated Sunday, April 26, 2026, entitled Don Bennink, the Florida Giant Who Built a Better Holstein. And it is on your web pages, and you can feel free to look at that. With that, I'm going to pause and share with you about a 10-minute excerpt from a video I did in 2024 when Don was up here at the time. At what point in your development, and we'll get back to that in a second, but did your interest get keen enough to track down your dad's travails? Was there an aha moment?
It was like I always had that feel I'm different, and I don't have a father to talk about and this kind of thing, or the kids would, be bitching about the old man this and the old man that, and I'd said, man, I wish he'd give him to me, I just remember those kind of things, you felt sort of out of it and different. And so that chance was when I had it, took it. She never remarried or anything. She had, a fair number of suitors, but there was just no other man that could match him in her mind. She pretty much, and I didn't like it because it was farther away from home, but she insisted that go to Chautauqua School rather than Panama.
Yeah. You graduated in 59. Then what did you decide to do? What's next for you?
Went to college, immediately.
Where's that?
Cornell.
Cornell.
Right out of college, I rented what was a 35 cow tie stall barn at Fredonia. I found what was really important was getting the right kind of soil, and in this part of the world, Chautauqua and so forth, it's a gravel soil, and I found a super plot of gravel soil outside of Clymer, and managed the owner of it was really accommodating, and just really helped me to get there. And he had nothing but an old stagecoach house that was quite fascinating in itself, but that was the only building there. I was going to have to build all the barns and things, and so was phasing into that in about 1968, 69. I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to keep the number of people I have and cut the cows in half, and I'm just for the hell of it, I'm going to law school. No, had absolutely zero intention of ever practicing. Just needed to get out and see how the other half lived. I had very little contact with the law, and so it kind of interested me, as how am I going to be able to learn to do this, and found a law school that was shut down every September, which I desperately needed for getting the crops in, and just decided to do that, and it was 135 miles away, so I was getting home on weekends, trying to help some, but then get back to school, but then be at the farm the full month. Went at Cleveland Marshall.
Oh, Cleveland Marshall, of course, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have any sense that you might practice?
Almost none. I thought, maybe a little, and once in a while, I'd have a buddy get in a jam or something, and I'd said, geez, I'd like to maybe be able to help him out, but I need to keep the farm going. But, and some good friends of mine, had, basically Art and Lucian as their consul, and they kept saying, damn, I, wish you'd go there and help some. And they called me up, and they were smarter than I was, so much smarter. They talked me into practicing law 1 day a week. And I don't have to tell you how long that lasted. So then it was just, I was just smothered, because every time a cow was having trouble having a calf, I was doing court. And if you're going to do things right, you can only do things one at a time. And I practiced here for 3 years, and I liked the practice, but I also liked the cows, and I knew this combination just doesn't work. And I happened to be in Florida, exactly where we are now, on a case, a guy in a bunch of trouble down there, and went down to work on that case, and I said, geez, man, this is just perfect. So I call up my wife, Mary Ann, and she, and told her that, and she didn't begin to believe it. And she was in the middle of buying a kitchen. I said, whatever you do, don't buy that kitchen, because we're moving. And she didn't believe me, and I got home, and there the kitchen was all bought, so, but we from then on, it all progressed in the state. One of the guys that I think was always underrated here was Bill Duncanson.
Yes.
I mean, Bill really helped me immensely, and he was so different. He had done all his practice as a defendant's lawyer in a real tough part of New York City, and he was really good at it, and he really helped me a lot, and we were really close friends. He had a few head of cattle. I could help him with his cattle, and he could help me like hell with the cattle. And then Mike Goldman was there, and Mike was sure a good buddy, and we had
Mancuso?
yeah.
Johnny Red.
John, yeah, and I used to take he and another young lawyer out some on particularly night cases, and try to split it up so we'd each have a part. Some lawyers would complain fiercely about that, but as far as I was concerned, it was helping them train, but it was, but made a lot of good friends, Probably 90% was the stuff that was walking in my door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my wife particularly didn't like that at 6 in the morning.
So they come see you in Clymer?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. No, I didn't get in the office here 10, 11 most mornings, because I had appointments at home, and it probably did a lot of tax work. Largely one farmer selling his farm to another, going out of business, trying to set it up that it would be advantageous to both tax-wise and get and that kind of thing. Probably 80% of my clients were farmers, one way or another.
Yeah.
And so it was just it was, and there was really no one else right in that part of the county.
You developed a relationship, though, with the Reeds, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, nope. And I ended up buying them out because they went different directions themselves, but Ronnie, of course, is passed on, but Junior's still going. Junior lives 5-6 miles down the road, and we beat up on the world probably about once a week. Yeah.
So what is it that did you think to buy some lands, some cows? Because I know you and Holsteins became best friends. I mean, isn't that's your world, Holstein
Or
cows?
that was the Holstein cow, yeah. Yeah, I always enjoyed the genetics aspect of things, and Ronnie was more of a trader. He would rather buy and sell, and I would rather really build a top-notch herd and work. So we, we made it work. We didn't agree on that, but we made it work. And then he got to the point where he was wanting to cut way back on things, so I basically bought him out. We peaked at 13,000 heads, so we ended up with
13,000.
Yeah, so we were pretty busy.
It's magical. You're magical, Don. I'm so thrilled you reached out.
Well, thank you.
I really.
Well, you folks are, wow, what you've done here is beyond belief.
That's just a little snippet. He's in the actual interview itself, and that's why it's worth watching. He talks at length about his dad. And his dad, as you saw, passed away, and he never knew his dad. And how he went and did a lot of searching about what happened, and he became actively involved in that process of understanding about his dad's life as a military career. He also spent a lot of time talking about what was going on in Florida. And as you can see, I didn't know what to even ask, let alone what it was, but Don was very gracious and very interested in things that are happening in the community. And he impacted a lot of folks who were lawyers. In fact, one of them, Pat Rice, wrote me a note, said, thanks for thinking for me. I'm planning on attending, unfortunately. He and I were close at one time, and he is the reason that I am practicing in Chautauqua County. I have his obituary from Florida, and I just commend everybody to share it. He was a remarkable individual, a credit to our county and to the Bar Association. I think back to those days in the late 70s and 1980 and remember the good times and lasting relationships that I was able to develop as a result of my friendship with Don. He opened a lot of doors for me, and I always will be grateful to him. In addition, he went to Cleveland Marshall, as did Pat Rice, as did Neil Robinson, another attorney who some of you may have interacted with. They were all colleagues at the same time, went to the same law school. And as I mentioned, he mentioned, just for the Bar Association and for the record, he did work for the law firm of Bailey and Ledestro. That's Art Bailey and Lucian Ledestro. And part of that, a number of lawyers who were there at the time included John Lemancus, who became judge of the city of Jamestown, Mike Goldman, who was very active in the community, recently retired, and so on. So it's a remarkable interview, and so I commend you for it. It's out there. You just type in Don Bennink, you can't miss it. At this point, I'd like to open it up to anybody who would like to just chat or say a story or two. You heard Don talk about a little bit of Clymer. I'm curious, who are you folks here? And if somebody would like to come up and chat about Don?
I would say that I am Royal Nickerson's daughter, and I would say I'm Randy Wiltsey's wife. I've lost my identity. But I would say that Don started, help me out if I'm wrong, Chautauqua Breeders. And they had a bull by the name of Ivanhoe Chief. There's another word. Ivanhoe Chief. Somebody help me out. All right, I'm on my own. All right, but what I really want to say about, he started that, and they really did well. And my husband got to deliver the semen, and so it was great. Chautauqua Breeders was great. And he had a cap the other day, and he gave it away. And the whole family is like, Randy, get that cap back. So, all right. So, but what I really want to say about Don is something that is dear to my heart, and it better be in my obituary, children, that I promote milk. So my husband and I, we promote milk. But Don, when you stay with him and you open up his freezer, his glasses are in there. And somebody had said that he even tries to get the restaurants to put glasses in the freezer so that when he comes to the restaurant, he wants cold milk. And and so he promotes milk. And one morning when we were talking on the porch, and he was telling, because there's a promotion for milk that is like, milk is 98% fat-free. And he was trying to tell me what he thought our slogan should be, because that's our slogan right now. It used to be got milk, and now it's milk is 98% fat-free. And he was trying to tell me what he thought the slogan should be, and I wished we could have him back and have him as our promoter, because he had so many ideas on how to promote milk. Okay, so somebody else, come down here and help me out and fill in all my blanks. And because I sure do have a lot of stories, but I only have pieces. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to share a thought or two regarding Don? Anybody? Okay. With that, oh yeah, sure, please. Introduce yourself.
I'm Dennis Carlberg, dairy farmer from Frewsburg. And my first meeting with Don was, I was 10 years old, my first year at 4-H, and I had a calf that I took to the county fair, and I get up there and, you know, little 10-year-old, my dad, we unloaded the calf and my feed and that, and first time up there, and I was kind of lost. And, well, Don, he was next aisle over, and he was in his last year of 4-H, but he had some cows there, and he come over, and he kind of took me under his wing, and we've been friends ever since. And but it got where when he was going in Florida, he was really into the purebred Holsteins, and he liked to take a few cows to the Florida State Fair. And well, the fellow that was gonna get his cattle ready and take them to the show for him, he broke his arm, and he called one night. I was in the barn milking, and he called. My wife answered the phone in the house, and he needed me to. He says, "I gotta fly you two down here." He says, I gotta take these cows to the show. And she says, "Well, when is it?" "Well, we gotta have you on the first plane out of Buffalo tomorrow morning." And so, and how we made it happen. We went down. I figured, well, that'd be the only time I'd ever see Florida. But it was 32 years of him flying us down there, showing cattle for him. And but great guy, great boss, and I really miss him.
I want to bring up a picture on my phone. Okay, I also met Donnie at the fair. He was a couple years older than me, and definitely was one of my mentors in teaching me how to show cattle. The cow in the picture is my cow, Aristocrat Last Val Beth. She won all kinds of prizes at the Chautauqua County Fair, the Erie County Fair, the State Fair. But the couple in the picture, our Meet the Millers. Do any of you remember when the Meet the Millers television show was on? Okay. So I'm not sure where I was, but the Meet the Millers at the were at the Erie County Fair and wanted my cow on, and I wasn't there, so Don took my cow, and so I'm pretty proud of that picture.
Good afternoon, hello, or good morning. My name's Alistair Ogue, and I first met Don through my dad, through 4-H in the early 60s. And working with the Sharp County Fair, the black and white show, Don took care of some of our cows and heifers when my dad was working at another farm, and then we went out on our own in 1966 and we got our cows back, and we worked with Don for a few years and still had friends with him for all those years. And then Don retired and went, or not retired, but went to Florida, bought his farm down there, and my dad would go down there and see him, visit him, and like Denny, go to the state fair with him and show cattle and have a lot of good time. And then when my dad retired in the early 2000s, moved down there a couple miles away from North Florida, and that was his retirement. You know, he still had something to do every day and go to work and work with Don with the breeding of the cattle and the show cattle with Denny, and doing a lot of stuff, just help looking over things, you know, just another guy there, you know, to help Don out. So that had great friendship with them, the Reeds, through the years, and with Junior and Ronnie down there. And in fact, Junior just lived down the road from my dad, you know. They were neighbors, you know, so it's, but Don built a great enterprise down there and was very accommodating and forward-looking to get things done and know how things worked, and knew what to do, or was able to research a lot of stuff. You know, he'd be in his office just researching stuff and looking at stuff and thinking about stuff, and that was Don. You know, not saying a whole lot, but thinking about stuff, you know, all the time, and just built a great big herd, and having students there from around the world. And that would, my mom and dad enjoyed that because they would have the students over the house and having get-togethers, and Donnie would have kids from all over the world. There's from just about every country in the world, a lot from Africa, China. In fact, I heard that some of the kids, some of the students in China had their own memorial for Don in China, you know, and this happened. And so it's just amazing the outreach, or not outreach, the outlook he has, or in the world, you know, that people will recognize him or know him or know of him, you know, of more than a lot of people, you know, and had a lot of people there from foreign countries working on the farm for a long time also, you know, and then they would go off and do great things by themselves, or go back to their own countries, you know, and get things done, you know. So, and it was just a good experience, you know, for my dad, and helping out and knowing things, you know, and working with Don, you know. And I'm not in the farm business myself, but I was able to help out and over the years a little bit with my dad, and then see him, and then visit with Don down in Florida, and be down at Bell. So, and I just remember him fondly of all the stuff and the hard work he's done through the years. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Nichelle Carlberg. I'm Denny's daughter. Well, I guess the first time I met Don officially would have been that year that we flew down to Florida. The next morning, I would have been 2 years old. So I don't really remember that one, but through Don, I got to show cows at the Florida State Fair before I even got to show my own cows at New York State Fair. He was always welcoming to us. When we would go down, we'd stay at the house with Don, Mary Ann, Patty, and Danny, and Patty, Shannon, and I would share a room, and then we got to go play on the farm all day. It always amazed me. You'd go out to the pastures or the lots, and Don would just stand there and tell you, that's this cow, and give you the whole pedigree without looking at anything. It didn't matter how big the herd had gotten at that point. We'd stay at the river house once that came about. Lots of memories there, but through Don, though, having us go to Florida, it turned out that we ended up having family vacations every year to Florida, because we'd go to the show. Dad would go down early. Mom, Shannon, and I would meet him down at the show, and then we'd continue on to Disney. So it ended up forming our family vacations. So miss him. He was always available through email or text messages, or Dad would talk to him weekly. But he was always available, even to my sister and I, through all the years. So we do miss him very much.
Yeah, my name's Mike Rader. I'm a farmer from Sherman, and came along like Denny did. I was 10 years old. My dad was shelling corn for Don, North Climber, and I wanted to be in 4-H, and you needed a registered calf, which we had grades, and so my dad took me over there, and I actually met Don's pig before I met him, and he had a famous pig because it weighed about a ton, and it jumped up out of the hay and kind of scared me, and then, but I did get a calf and got started, and these guys were, a generation above me, and I really just worship these guys, and I'm just really lucky to have these guys to look up to. I want to thank Don, because he's up there as an angel looking down on us now, and he lives on through us, and all he taught us, and just to be in his orbit kind of brought you up to another level. Michelle mentioned a vacation. This maybe gives you an idea what kind of guy he was. And we really, had, well, as guys farming know, it's hard to get away for vacations, and either time and money or something usually keeps you at home. But my grandmother's friend had a place in Florida and let us stay there, so we went down there for Easter break, take the kids to Disney World, and we went to see the farm, and showed up out of the blue, more or less, because we hadn't really planned on taking a vacation. But it was Easter Day, and just to give you an idea, Don, I'm sure, had plenty to do without showing us the farm, and then going out to get something to eat on Easter and driving around Bell trying to find a place that was open. We finally found a place, and I don't think Mary Ann, was getting a little bit tired of that, but he didn't have to do that. But that's the kind of guy he was. And I'm just so thankful to know him, and you can't know what you've never seen, I've been told, and just to go down there, and he was a leader not just in the country, but of the world, at a time when dairy went from 200 cows, was a big farm, to 13,000 head, and now bigger. But he led the way in so many ways that way, and we could just go on and on about the stories, and I just, always wish could have been more. He could have wrote a book, and, I'm sad that he's gone, but just so happy to have him in my life. So, thank you.
Anybody else? We're at the Robert Jackson Center, and just a little tie-in that Don wanted when he came here to tell the story. This dealt with an individual who he intersected with called Clyde Anderson. Does that ring any bells with anybody? Clyde Anderson? Well, anyways, Clyde Anderson hung around Don's house when Don was young. As you know, Don grew up with his mom, and Clyde maybe had to shine a little bit on Don's mother, but never didn't progress. So he would take Don to what was called the Lakewood Stock Farm, a Lakewood Stock Farm which was owned by Robert Jackson, Elmer Selstrom, and a guy named Crawford Barger. And so he wanted to tell the story about Clyde and his early relationship on the Lakewood Stock Farm, which he had a chance to actually meet Jackson, hence his interest in the Jackson Center. So that's also part of the interview process. Don wanted to come here to tell the Clyde Anderson story. So for those who may have connected with Clyde Anderson and there was a connection with Jackson, Robert Jackson and all this. But let me conclude on something I said I wasn't going to do, which is the Don Bennink. Because you've all talked about it, and to maybe some extent around it, but this is an article called Don Bennink, the Florida Giant Who Built a Better Holstein. And it goes on like this. I'll move it along. And here's the picture of Don. Don Bennink died April 20th, 2026 at 84. If you work in a dairy and that name doesn't stop you cold, you haven't been paying attention. The man who built North Florida Holsteins from scratch and rewrote what a hot climate dairy could be is gone. But what he left behind will outlive most of us in this business. Don grew up in Western New York, started milking cows in junior high, and never really stopped. He graduated from Cornell in 1963, then, because one career apparently wasn't enough, earned a law degree from Cleveland Marshall and practiced law while he kept expanding his farming operations. The cows won. In 1980, he packed up and moved south to Bell, Florida, where he founded North Florida Holsteins on the premises that humidity, heat, and sand didn't have to beat you if you outthought them. He outthought them. North Florida grew into roughly 12,000 head across 3,000 acres, an operation that had no business succeeding in that climate, except Don made it succeed by being relentlessly practical. He put up tunnel-ventilated barns in 2001 when most of the industry was still arguing about whether cows really needed the help. He was right. They did. Here's the thing about Don. He didn't farm for ribbons. He farmed for profit, for longevity, for cows that actually worked in the real world. He once said it out loud. North Florida was about profit, not glory. And he meant it. That clarity is exactly why so many of us kept calling him, visiting him, quoting him. And the headline, the genetics guy who didn't follow the crowd. Don built his own genetic selection system before genomics was cool, then became one of its earliest and loudest adopters of genomic testing when it arrived. He pushed back on the stature arms race when the rest of the breed was chasing tall cows into stalls that couldn't hold them, and the data eventually proved him right. He also went after inbreeding problem head on, finding workarounds while the industry shrugged at a 9.99% number it should have panicked over. In 2024, the National Dairy Shrine named him Distinguished Dairy Cattle Breeder. It was overdue. Mentor, host, and unofficial university. This was mentioned. North Florida Holsteins doubled as a living laboratory. Don built deep partnerships with the University of Florida and Ohio State, and his international student internship program turned into one of the most respected pipelines in the industry. Generations of researchers, vets, and young dairymen walked that yard and left sharper than they came in. Ask around. The number of careers that started with Don Bennink gave me a shot is staggering. Industry service that actually moved things. The board seats are a long list. Upper Florida milk producers, Florida dairy farmers, Southeast Milk. He chaired SMI Trucking for more than 25 years and served as president of the Florida Dairy Farmers. The honor track record matches Florida 4-H Hall of Fame, Florida Agricultural Hall of Fame, World Dairy Expo Dairyman of the Year, and Cornell's Outstanding Alumni Award in 2024. He showed up, he served, he said what he thought, even when the room didn't want to hear it. For all the scale and all the honors, the people who knew Don best will tell you the same thing. He was a husband, father, and grandfather first. Rest easy, Don. The barns you built, the cows you shaped, the students you trained, and the family you love, that's a legacy most of us will spend a lifetime chasing and never catch. With that, we have a celebrity who just walked in, Mike Goldman.
I met Don, I don't know how many years ago. I was in between my second and third years of law school. I was working with Park Catchpole and Walt Donovan. Don, at that time, was a farmer, and he had a little issue with, I'll call it the farming co-op because I don't know any better, but so I met him when he was in there, and he was actually a client of Walt Donovan's, and at that point he was thinking of going to law school. So you'd think that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. So then I went to work for Lucian Ledestro. And so as I was, there's a back room where all the, I'm going to call them the other lawyers, were there. Pat Rice was one of them. He came in. And then guess who came in also? Don Bennink. So speaking of Pat Rice, so in the back room were Pat, me, and Don, along with Wayne Tramner, who was Lucian's longtime paralegal. So we had a good time. We got together, and the three of us, Pat and Don and I, of course, we were the associates. We were the guys that had to do all the work. I don't want to say it that way, but it was. And so, and we became friendly. It turns out, just to add another connection, his wife, Marianne, who I think I see in the front row, at that time worked in the Jamestown school system with a woman whose name was Barb Lundeen at that point. She became Barb Goldman. So there was a connection at that point. So it's a long, and I enjoyed meeting the people, the Reeds and the other people that he knew. And of course, we were friendly. Of course, then he decided to go to Florida, and the rest is history. So it was a lot of fun. Pat, do you want to say anything?
Yeah. I first ran into Don when he drove into my family farm's driveway to see my father. I was a law student at the time over at Cleveland Marshall. Don had recently graduated from law school, and he was there to see my dad, who was a tax attorney, and he was putting together an estate plan for a client of his, and he was there to talk to my father about getting some advice as to how to do all this. And Don and I became friendly, and I really didn't know what I was going to be doing. As I say, I was in law school and didn't have any plans, really didn't know what I was going to do. And Don suggested that I come to Chautauqua County. So I took the New York bar, and Don introduced me to Lucian and to Art, and I met Mike, and I met Bill Duncanson Sr., and Wayne, I think, was there at the time, and met some lifelong friends through that. I also met a number of Don's friends here in Chautauqua County through my dealings with Don, and those individuals became lifelong friends. And you know, Junior Reed is somebody that is I still talk to, who's down in Florida and who I still talk to. Don was a mentor to me. Don took me under his wing. If it wasn't for Don, I probably wouldn't have been able to survive in practice here in Chautauqua County. It was Don who provided me with the basis for my clientele in the county. He was the person that introduced me to people that eventually became clients of mine when I went into practice on my own. Don was to me was a great person. He had a great sense of humor. We sat a lot of times in that office up on the second floor of the Furniture Mart building, and we joked around and spent a lot of time laughing. I know Junior Reed was there quite a bit of time, and it was a real education for me, and those were memories I'll never forget. I didn't have much time practicing with Don. I graduated from law school in 1978, and I believe Don went down to Florida in '79 and started looking around for farms about then. And he found a farm and bought it in 1980. And he moved down there in 1980. And I have vivid memories of that move because I hauled a truckload of equipment down there for him. And I'll never forget the move. We had some adventures driving that old semi of the farm down there to Florida. If I remember correctly, it was 109 degrees in Atlanta. We had an engine box between us, and we had a cooler of ice on top of the engine block, and we were filling our hats with ice and putting our hats on, trying to cool off. I think that's where the truck finally overheated. But I'm proud to say that Don Bennink was a friend of mine. He was probably the closest person to a genius, if not a genius, that I've ever met. He was probably the hardest working person I've ever been associated with. I know that Don, when I was practicing with him for the short period of time we were together, would go into that office and work all day, and he would work. He would work with the rest of us. He would work till 6, 7 o'clock at night, and he would go back to that farm, and he would be working at that farm. And I know that there were some nights he spent most of the night plowing, or doing field work, or doing work with the cows. I don't know when the man slept, He was just a driven individual. And I think the accomplishments, and I assume that, Greg, you went over some of the accomplishments, some of the awards that he won. I know that he was Cornell alumni, or Cornell Man of the Year in 2024, I believe. Is that right, Marianne? He was just an astounding person. I can't imagine what he would have done for Chautauqua County and for the Bar Association if he had stayed here and decided to devote his full attentions to the law in Chautauqua County. I think he would have been marvelous. But I think the dairy industry was very, very lucky to have him. He was an extraordinary individual, and somebody I will always be grateful to for the experiences that I had with him and just for knowing him.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Neil?
Good afternoon. I'm Neil Robinson, and like Pat, I went to Cleveland Marshall College of Law. So now the audience is aware that the graduates of that law school cannot tell time, as we both arrived an hour late, apparently. So anyway, I first met Don Bennink in law school. He was a year behind me in the student lounge. I do recall seeing him sitting there and thought, this guy kind of looks like he's from Chautauqua County in his boots, jeans, and plaid shirt. So I decided to go over and speak with him, and we spoke, and he told me he was from Clymer. And so a number of times, whenever I'd see Don in the student lounge, we'd generally get together and chat. He was a great talker. What immediately impressed me about him was he was a full-time law student, and he was a full-time dairy farmer 2.5 hours away. And I was just amazed he could do that. But every Friday, he'd get in that duster of his and head back to Clymer, and off he go. It's just law school can be extremely stressful, and particularly your first year, because you're afraid all the time. And perhaps Don, I don't think he was ever afraid. He knew that he could take that challenge. And going back and forth to law school at that time, before Interstate 86 was opened, I lived in Lakewood, and you'd go to Sherman and take 430 into Findlay Lake and then on to Wesleyville. And between Findlay Lake and Wesleyville, there was an ice cream stand on the road to Colt Station. Greg Edwards probably remembers it. And so when I did go home on weekends, I'd always stop there on Sunday to get a large vanilla milkshake with malt. It would last me, if judiciously I drank it, it would last me almost to the Ohio line. But Don told me one time he stopped there too every Sunday when it was open. And so I'd stop and I'd ask the lady, same lady there, I said, Don been through? And she'd say, yeah, he came through about an hour ago. Or I'd stop and she'd say, well, your friend hasn't been through yet, but I know he's coming. So he was just a nice guy to talk to. He was intense, yet he had a good sense of humor. And when he didn't really, he was a little older than some of us there, and because of his commitment to his dairy farm, he didn't partake in some of the better parts of law school, such as the Friday night meetings of the Evidence Club at the Harbor Inn from 9 in the evening to 1 in the morning. Never saw him there, because he had made his commitment to get back to the farm. And when Don came back and began practicing, I'd run into him. As Pat said, he was over at Lucian Ledestro and Art Bailey's office. There was a whole slew of them over there. And occasionally I'd run into him. I was a prosecutor, and he would defend people on traffic tickets, and I'd run into him in court. And once Don took a position, you couldn't change it. That's the way it was. And he was intractable in that regard. Gosh, I remember one time when there was a little traffic case in the town of Bustye, and Don showed up with the Pat and maybe Phil Calla. All three of them were there to try the case against me. I was so impressed by all the suits those guys were wearing, I almost dismissed the charges, but we went on. And perhaps a nice testament to Don is at one point when Judy and I moved to Jamestown, our neighbor was Mary Ann Harp. And Judy and I and Mary Ann were sitting on our front porch one day, and somehow the topic came up with Don, and Mary Ann said that she had been married to Don. I said, what? And here's a refined lady whose interests are music and flowers and things like that, and she married a dairy farmer. And she went on to say what a nice guy Don was. The only negative thing she had to say about him was he didn't like to see flowers planted on good farmland. Right, Mary Ann? So I know Don went on to great accomplishments, and his family should be very proud of him, and he was a good guy, and I know he'll be missed by his friends. Thank you.
Tulips, and he'd say, can't you plant something practical?
Yeah, practical, that's what it was. Like peas or hay.
Cute. Greg?
Well, Greg Edwards, I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Don as a young man. My father, Joe, was a banker and climber, and got to know Don very well through that. And I can distinctly recall as a young man going over to his farm in Clymer Center. And at the time, that was the farm. It was, we had a small 60-head herd on, at the time, my grandfather's, I guess it was my folks' farm at the time. But to see Don's operation was significant. I lament the fact that our good friend Art Bailey isn't here, because he could regale you for hours with stories about his escapades with Don. But I'll go on to or ask Greg, if you would, to share with the family the letter that, or email that Dale Robbins sent me that really articulated Don's achievements in the dairy business. But I will just summarize them to say that I called the publisher of the Tumbleweed, a national publication in the dairy industry. He knew Don by name, by history, by impact. And he said, Greg, I never got a chance to really spend time with him, but call the CEO of the United States Holstein Association, John Maloney. He knows Don very well, and he could give you all the background there. So I share that because we tend to be myopic, and we're thrilled to have someone do great things locally and be recognized for them. But Don was known nationally, and I'm quite certain internationally, for his capacity as a businessman, farmer, and an innovator, and someone who really took the dairy industry and changed it individually on the national scale. So as a young man, I was thrilled to meet him, to hear the stories from my father of their work together. And I'm sure he imprinted on me, because I followed in the legal field, and I've enjoyed the farming industry myself through my family. And I will ask, and if I'll get it to you, Greg, if you don't have it, Dale Robbins, a local attorney, did a fabulous job researching specifically his history, his impact, and the folks that he touched. So I'll make sure that's part of today's events. A wonderful life, well lived, one that we can be proud that we were part of. You can't say that about many people. Thank you.
Come on up, the family would like to hear this.
The most earliest thing I remember about Don was he had the farm on the Whittier farm in Blockville. And I would go up there, and he would be milking, and there was always a squirt in the face. When he was squirting, squirting, open your mouth, no. And then I got on that pig and rode that around. I thought it was fun, and it was for a while. But no, I did get to see Don last April, the April before, and went down to his farm. And I was just amazed. My brothers and sister went down, and you just couldn't believe it. And we stayed on the Swanee River, got to go down the Swanee River like you guys did.
And it's just a wonderful time, you know. He said 500,000 gallons of milk was going out that day. And it's just hard to believe. Very impressive. I was so glad we went down to see him. And I know we miss him.
Thank you. This has been remarkable. Honestly, Marianne, thanks for spreading the word to the family members and for all you showing up. It's special tribute to Don and to those who knew Don, because Don did leave here in 1980, and so, but he left a memory for that. So I thank you all for coming, and if there's nothing further, we'll adjourn this proceeding, and it will be posted on YouTube. Thank you very much.